We're talking today with Mr. Duane Neff of Holland, Michigan. The interviewer is James Smither of Grand Valley State University. Mr. Neff, can you begin by giving us a little bit of background on yourself? Where were you born, or where did you grow up?
I was born in Owasso, Michigan, and I grew up around Elma, Michigan, in Gratiot County.
Okay. And what did your family do?
My family at that time were farmers. We lived on 3 different farms in that area. My dad drove milk truck for Borden's, hauled milk into Borden's in Perrington. And Dad finally quit that and went to work for Consumers Power Company on the pipeline when they laid the first gas line to Lansing.
And when was that?
That was in 1934.
Okay.
33, 34 along there. And when the pipeline was done, of course, he was laid off. And he went to work for for Griever Tank Company, laying blacktop. He mixed the blacktop for M55 between Lake City and Houghton Lake.
Okay. And then did you finish high school?
I finished high school in Carson City. We moved to Carson City area, and I graduated from Carson City.
All right. And then when did you graduate?
1941.
Okay.
42, I'm sorry.
Okay. And then how long was it then after that before you got drafted?
I was drafted. I graduated in June and drafted the next February.
Okay. And what did you do in between?
I worked for Swift and Company in Elma.
Were you meat processing or?
We're taking care of chickens and ducks and turkeys like that. And I was drafted, and when I was drafted, I went to Battle Creek, Fort Custer. From Fort Custer, I went to Atlantic City, New Jersey, on the boardwalk, and learned how to march.
Okay.
That's quite an experience.
Had you been on a long train trip before you'd gone out there?
No, not any long ones. I ridden the train a lot because I used to ride the train from Elma to Marion. My dad and mother lived in Marion, and I'd ride the train up to there on weekends and ride it back on Monday morning.
Okay. Did you see New York City as you went by, or did you just not notice that?
I can't remember our exact route. We must have went close to New York City. I know we were on electric railroads. I can remember that. We left Atlantic City and went to Greensboro, North Carolina. Took some more basic training there.
Okay. Did you have any basic training in Atlantic City, or was that just
marching?
And how long did they have you there?
We was only there a couple months, I guess. Something like a couple, 3 months.
Okay.
We were in the Traymore Hotel, I know that.
Okay. And what was Atlantic City like at that point? What sort of town was it?
Just a tourist town. It was kind of dead because it was in the wintertime, it was cold. That little wind coming off that Atlantic Ocean was cold.
And did they have blackouts in effect along the coast?
Yeah. Very much, always blacked out. From Greensboro, we went to Fort Gordon Johnson, Florida. It was at Apalachicola, Florida.
Okay. Now, in Greensboro, where were they doing the sorting out? As you're drafted initially, at what point do you know what branch of the service you're going to be in, or what kind of unit you're going to be in?
I don't know where they did do that, but I know that when we were in Atlantic City, we were in the Air Force.
Okay.
Strictly Air Force, and which I wanted. That was what I wanted. And in fact, they wanted to put me in the Navy at one time, and I didn't want the Navy. And I hollered about it, and they said, "All right, we'll put you in the Air Force." And I said, "All right, that's good."
Okay.
My dad was in the Air Force in World War I. And you want me to continue?
Yeah.
Okay. And from Apalachicola, Florida, we went to Drew Field, which is at Tampa. That's Tampa International Airport now. And we took radio training there and ground observer training.
Okay. Now, what did that kind of training consist of?
Ground observer training is where you can identify flying aircraft, all different kinds, all foreign and American. And we were supposed to, I think it was a tenth of a second that we could identify an aircraft. And they'd go through hundreds of them, and you just say it one right after the other and identify the airplanes.
Okay. And then was it radio training or radar training?
Radio.
Radio, okay. And what do they do for that?
Just learn how to Morse code and like that.
Had you known any of that kind of thing before?
No.
Okay.
I knew radio and I knew what Morse code was, but I didn't know any of it. I never did learn Morse code. I don't know why.
What, let's see, and then how long do you think they had you in Tampa there?
We were in Tampa from, let's see, we got in there, oh boy, when's it? We were there probably 6 months,
Okay.
3 to 6 months.
What, and then, well, while you're there, I mean, what did you do when you were off duty?
Went to the beach.
Mm-hmm.
There's a picture on here someplace. Went to Clearwater to the beach.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the girls. And let's see, but that's about all. We didn't do anything drastic.
Mm-hmm.
Went swimming.
Did they provide, was there like a USO operating there? Did they have,
There was a USO in Clearwater.
and did they do dances and things
Yeah.
like that? And did you go to any of those things, or?
I think I did. I vaguely remember it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did. I went to one dance because I got hurt in one dance. I got injured in privates. But I wound up in the hospital that night, and then they brought me back to base.
So that probably took care of your dancing career for a while.
Yeah, right.
All right. Now, were you training with a particular unit at that point, or were you going to be sent as a replacement somewhere?
We were with this outfit right here, 574th.
Okay, so this was one that was just being formed then when you were joining it?
Yeah, it was formed in Florida. Actually, you ever heard of Arioles?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he owned a racetrack in Florida, and we were stationed on that racetrack,
Okay.
just outside of Oldsmore, Florida.
Okay. Now, where were the men in your unit from? Were they kind of from all over the place?
All
Or?
over the place. My best buddy was from Grand Island, Nebraska, and he and I are still friends, and
Mm-hmm.
he lives in Grand Island yet. He and I worked in the mail together.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, where then did you go after Tampa?
After Tampa, we went to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, not Hattiesburg, we went to Gulfport, Mississippi,
Mm-hmm.
and we took more training there. I think we took some amphibious training there.
Mm-hmm.
And then from Gulfport, we went to Hattiesburg, Army Air Base.
Mm-hmm.
What a place. Boy, all kinds of airplanes. They had 3 L5s and 1 L6 or L4, whatever they
Mhm.
were, Stinsons, like a Piper Cub.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Little
the
bit
training
bigger.
planes, yeah.
Training plane, that's all was there.
Mm-hmm.
But we marched on the runways. And we packed up our gear there. Of course, we had all our gear then.
Mhm.
We collected all our radars and everything. We packed it all up there and shipped it to Fresno, California.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to Fresno, and then we went out in the desert for desert training.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't take any radars out there. And we stayed in Fresno. As near as I can remember, the place we were in Fresno was the same place the Japanese were incarcerated, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And because they said that was a prisoner of war camp. So it had to have been the same place.
Yeah. Although there were the original group of Japanese Americans who were interned, and they may well have gone through there and then been sent
Right.
farther east. I'm not sure how many Japanese prisoners there were.
Well, these weren't prisoners. They were
These were the American
prisoners, American
yeah, yeah.
Japanese,
Mhm.
which I think was all wrong. I never agreed with that at all. And then from there we went to Pittsburgh, California. That's a port of debarkation.
Mm-hmm.
And we left. Now I never can remember. Maybe you know. Where do the boats ship out from? Oakland or San Francisco?
People usually say San Francisco.
Okay. We shipped out of San Francisco and under the Golden Gate Bridge,
Mm-hmm.
and that would have been in February of '44.
Okay. Now, before you went on that trip, had you ever been on a big boat before or on the ocean before? Okay. So what was that like?
Exciting,
Mm-hmm.
interesting. I can remember what they fed us that night because we hadn't had a lot to eat that day because we were traveling all day.
Right.
So they fed us sauerkraut and weenies,
Mm-hmm.
And I never saw so many floating sauerkraut and weenies in all my life as there was on the decks of that ship.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was seasick, but I wasn't. I never got seasick. And we left San Francisco, and it was on the run out of tape, are we?
No, I'm just keeping my eye on it.
Sir Walter Raleigh tobacco boat to Cape Newnham.
Okay.
And as near as we were told, and I can remember, we were one of the first ships to leave San Francisco and run the gauntlet by ourselves without an escort.
Mm-hmm.
And we went clear south, down past South America until we were back in the cold weather again.
Wow.
We were south of New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
Then they swung to that would be to the west,
Mm-hmm.
and come back up along New Zealand and Australia, and we made our first port was Port Moresby,
Mm-hmm.
which is on the southern tip of New Guinea.
Right.
And then from Port Moresby we went to Finchhaven, and we unloaded at Finchhaven.
All right. Now, at that point, the fighting had kind of passed through that area of New Guinea and was going on,
Yeah.
elsewhere. So, what was your unit's assignment?
Our assignment was just making sure everything was working, and we were preparing, I think, for the invasion of the Philippines.
Okay. Were you operating? Was your unit operating radar there?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
We operated a radar. We had units scattered all over. We had the 270 units, the 270 radars, which is the big ones, the big eye antennas.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, what else did we do? That's about all we did there. We just made sure everything was operating. And
What sort of a place was this? What did you see in the area around you? Did you see any of the local population?
around New Guinea,
Yeah.
well, we saw the natives. There was lots of them around, and
Mm-hmm.
they were friendly to us. I mean, we weren't harassed by them, or we didn't harass them.
Mm-hmm.
But we used to swap with them. We'd trade gum and cigarettes for jewelry, and in fact, I used to have a lot of that stuff. I think I finally give it away.
Mm-hmm.
Combs and like that
Right.
they used. They lived in the jungle.
Mm-hmm.
They had villages, but they weren't nothing elaborate.
Sure. Now, did your unit have problems with jungle diseases? Do people get malaria or things like that?
I had malaria. In fact, I guess as far as I know, I still have it.
Mm-hmm.
But we had what they call jungle rot.
Mm-hmm.
Guys got in their feet,
Mm-hmm.
but it was just simple. They wanted to wear wet shoes all the time,
Right.
and that's what caused it. It was just a fungus, is all it was.
Mm-hmm. But by that time, did the medics kind of know how to control those
Right,
things?
they did. They were right on. We had good medics in our outfit. We had two good doctors. We had a baby doctor and a regular surgeon.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the baby, was the baby doctor got shot? One of them got shot in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember which one. One of the doctors got shot.
Okay. Now, let's see. They put you at Finchhaven, and about how long do you think you stayed there?
Oh, probably a couple of months, and then we went from there to Hollandia.
Okay, so kind of farther up along the coastline.
Yeah, Hollandia is in Dutch New Guinea.
Mm-hmm.
That's the northern half of
Right.
which is,
So
what do they call it now?
Well, Indonesia is in the Dutch half, and there were sort of Papua New Guinea, and then about the west. The eastern half of New Guinea was sort of divided into north and south halves, and those are Papua New Guinea, and the western half is Dutch. But Hollandia might still have been on the Papuan side.
Hollandia was basically almost right on the equator.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that,
Mm-hmm.
because it used to rain like mad there, and an hour after it quit raining, it was dry.
Mm-hmm.
And we stayed there, and then we shipped out of there to the Philippines.
Now, while you were in New Guinea, did you ever have any problems with Japanese aircraft or anything else like that? Yeah.
We used to have, they'd fly over photograph planes
Mm-hmm.
and like that, but they didn't pay attention to them. They might shoot at them a couple times, and
Mm-hmm.
of course, they was always so high you couldn't hardly see them, but they had nicknames for them. Curly called Charlie,
Mm-hmm.
if you know what I mean.
Yep.
And we left Hollandia. I can't remember the date we left there. It must have been in, well, it had to have been October.
Mm-hmm.
October of
44.
44. And we made the invasion. The regular invasion was the 20th of October, and we went in on the morning of the 24th.
Now, at the point when you went in, had the big battle already happened out in Leyte Gulf?
It was winding up right then. There was ships still sinking and burning, and,
Mm-hmm.
we could see them as well. We saw the flashes in the sky that night as we was coming up through there, and they said that's what it was. That there was a big naval battle going there.
So what were things like on the beach at Leyte when you got there?
Not very nice.
Mm-hmm.
We had, of course, LSTs. You know, that's a landing ship, and they don't like to get stuck on shore.
Mm-hmm.
They drop off a sea anchor before they get out of shallow water,
Mm-hmm.
and then they in hopes that sea anchor will pull them back off the beach.
Right.
So when they got up as close to the beach as they figured they dared get without getting stuck, they stopped,
Mm-hmm.
and we were still in water up to here.
All right. And when you did you have your equipment with you? Did you have to drive trucks off
We
the
had
LST?
trucks. They built a sand
Kind of a little causeway thing.
causeway
Yeah.
out to us,
Mm-hmm.
and we drove our trucks in there. And as soon as you got your truck in there and parked it, then they took you back to the ship again.
Mm-hmm.
And we wound up swimming 55 gallons of gasoline, aviation gasoline, to shore. The whole inside of that LST was lined with barrels of gasoline, and we didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
Just like a floating bomb. But that's what we did the rest of that day.
Okay. Were you under aerial attack or bombardment?
It was in smoke screens, and we were right in smoke screen. You couldn't see the guy next to you.
Mm-hmm.
The smoke was that thick.
Were the Japanese hitting anything? I mean, were transports getting hit or warships?
Yeah, they were hitting transports, and LSTs were getting strafed.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't anything real close to us. There was one plane, one Japanese plane. You could see the pilot in it, and he went down right at the fantail of our LST.
Mm-hmm.
He was probably trying to hit it and missed it because he'd been shot and he'd been strafed. We had a black man that was a cook's helper or a cook on the LST,
Mm-hmm.
and he was a 20 millimeter machine gun operator and an aircraft gun,
Mm-hmm.
and he was a good shot because he was hitting them,
Mm-hmm.
and those guns, when they swing them around towards the fantail of the LST, they have a stop on them.
Mm-hmm.
You can only go so far.
Right.
Well, his stop didn't hold. He shot right through all the superstructure of the LSD.
Did any of your unit take any casualties while you were unloading, or?
None while we were unloading. We didn't lose anybody there. We lost 7 guys in Hollandia.
Mm-hmm.
They flew to, well, I think they were going on R&R in Australia,
Mm-hmm.
and the plane they were on crashed on the way down,
Mm-hmm.
or on the way back, I don't know which, but they never found them.
Yeah.
But
Nope.
as far as, and then we had our, while we was in Leyte, after we finally got our permanent base, we were inland about probably 3 miles,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a Catholic chaplain, Flannery, and he got hit with a hand grenade
Mm-hmm.
because he had his chaplain's flag stuck on the outside of his tent,
Mm-hmm.
and the Japs could see that, so they come in there at night and picked up the tent flap and rolled a hand grenade under it and took off.
So there were Japanese infiltrating the lines
Right,
then.
yeah.
How far were you from what was supposed to be the front line at that point?
Oh, probably 5-6 miles. And most of the fighting was up in the hills
Mm-hmm.
towards Hollandia.
So
Not Hollandia. Bay.
Mm-hmm. So the Japanese in your areas, were they left over from people who'd been defending
Right.
farther forward maybe, and they got cut off and they were still
Well,
there?
some of those were the night they dropped the paratroopers too. Some of those guys survived that flight. I don't know how they did. As low to the ground as they were when they jumped out of those planes. Phew.
So were there Japanese paratroopers attacking you?
Yep.
All right. that's another piece of the story that tends not to show up all that often. Do you have an idea how many of them there were, how large a unit was involved?
Oh, there was probably a half a dozen transports. Looked like a DC-3, you know, just like our regular DC-3s.
Right.
They had a name for them. I can't remember the names of them anymore. And they were there was quite a main road went right in front of our outfit, and they were flying right down that road and to the east of it a little bit, and dropping paratroopers. And one of them must have went right through the front part of our area and walked down through. That's the one I halted.
You halted one of them.
He halted, and he shot at us. Bullet went right there, and one went right there, and one went right over there.
Now, were you on just guard duty or patrol?
Yeah, we were sitting in a foxhole on guard duty. They put us on guard duty just as quick as they dropped the paratroopers.
Right. So did you catch him, or did they shoot him?
I stopped him. I hauled him, and he fired back at us, and I returned fire. I had a Thompson submachine gun, and I emptied it.
Once they kind of gotten past the paratroopers, did you have more people infiltrating the camp?
No.
That was just a.
They must have been in the jungle all the time around us, because every once in a while one of them would show up. We even had one show up in our chow line one day. Wanted something to eat. Well, hey, they were starving to death, and you can't blame them for getting something to eat if they could.
Yeah.
And they fed him and took him to the lockup. But as far as I used to drive from Dulag, that's where we were, on Leyte.
Yeah.
And I'd go to Bebe, which is on the other side of the island. And it was almost an all-day trip with the truck. And I used to see Japs walking along the road all the time. We never paid attention to them. They didn't pay attention to us. We didn't pay attention to them. We didn't bother them.
Were they carrying weapons? And
no, I don't think so. If they did, they were concealed. You couldn't see them with a pistol or something like that. But they didn't have long guns or rifles.
Right.
No.
Okay. Because again, that's the kind of thing that when you tend not to hear about or that you lose track of. I mean, there were certainly Japanese soldiers often behind the lines in different places, and so they would show up in chow lines and things. But the degree to which that was going on, when you still have a battle going on the island, it's not something you notice that much.
We could hear gunfire, you know, in the evening you could hear it, and sometime during the day, because they were. If you went from Dulag to Bebe, you went almost the full width of Leyte Island.
Right.
And he was quite a hill, not a mountain range, but it was a hilly area.
Right.
You had to go over that. And there was a lot of fighting went on up in there, in that hill area, because we used to drive up through there and there'd be Jap tanks sitting along the road, mortars and like that. We never saw any dead Japs, but I suppose somebody must have picked them up and buried them.
Okay. Now, was your unit kept busy? I mean, did you have Japanese air raids and things against the airfield?
Yeah.
Okay. And how did that normally work?
We picked them up with our radar, and they plotted it, and as soon as they knew where they were headed for, we'd send out a air raid warning, and they'd fire 3 red flares in the sky and for a warning, and 3 white ones to clear, I guess it was. I can't remember, something like that.
Did the attacks normally come at night?
Yeah, usually were at night. I know one night I got out of bed and got in the foxhole 37 times, and I said, that's enough of that, I'm not getting out of bed anymore.
Okay. Did you have fighters at the base that intercepted them, or did you just take your chances?
Yeah.
Okay.
We were right at the end of Dulag Strip, and they sent out patrol from there. I don't know if you ever heard of Major Bong. Well, he was on that strip right there. I've seen him lots of times.
Okay.
Ping Pong Bong flew P-38. He'd go out to meet him, and he'd shoot him down. Of course, there's other aces in that strip, but he was one of the ones that was there.
Now, and then while you're there, did you see much of the local population? Were there
Oh yeah,
Filipinos?
we were friendly with the Philippines. They were real nice people. I mean, we'd have no problems at all. They were tickled to death to see us there
Mm-hmm.
because the Japs were treating them mean.
Right.
And we gave them stuff. They did our laundry for us.
Mhm.
We paid them in practically nothing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But they were tickled to death to do it, and we were glad to have it done.
Mm-hmm. And did you have Filipino laborers working on the air base? I mean, doing different
No,
building or things
I
like
don't
that?
think so. They might have had some, but not.
Mhm.
They had officers club.
Mm-hmm.
They would have Filipinos helping in there,
Mm-hmm.
sweeping and
Yeah.
doing dishes and like that.
Uh, what kind of entertainment were they providing for you there? If you're based on an air base,
Just movies.
okay. And
We had USO shows, traveling USO shows.
Mhm.
I saw Jerry Colonna, the old bold guys, Jerry Colonna. You remember him?
Nope.
You don't remember him? Jerry Colonna and Bob Hope and Phyllis Francis Langford. Is that who it was?
Francis
Yeah.
Langford, yeah.
Francis Langford. And I saw the stage show Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. Very good. We saw that on the Philippines. But that's about all, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you can't remember all, but they had different things that we saw.
Mm-hmm.
As far as dances or anything like that, they didn't have
Well,
any dances.
no, we didn't have the appropriate women for that, I suppose. Yeah. What else kind of sticks in your mind about the time that you spent there on that base? You were talking about driving and so forth. Why were you having to drive a truck up and over the hill and back?
What I was doing was taking movies over there, and I'd show movies over there to them. I'd take my projector, one of the projectors,
Mhm.
and the film, and I'd go over and we'd telephone them or radio them,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd tell them I'd be there that night and have everybody ready for a movie. And of course, when they have a movie, they invite all the Filipinos,
Mm-hmm.
which is fine. They
Yeah.
come, they'd fill the theater right up, and they loved those movies too.
Mm-hmm. Well, did they have an actual movie theater, or were you in a big old tent, or just
Like
outside?
that one I showed you there.
Okay. Yeah, the outdoor one.
Yeah, outdoor. It was outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
No, we didn't have them in tents.
Okay. How did the movie equipment hold up in the climate?
It looked good.
Okay. They didn't rust out or anything.
No, not that I know. I never had any problems with it. Used to burn out a bulb once in a while, which
Mhm.
is irritating.
All right. Now, about when did you leave Leyte then? Did you get there in October, whatever? Then.
I left Lady. Must have been about a year later, and I went to Far Eastern Air Force headquarters in Manila.
Okay.
They broke our outfit up,
Mm-hmm.
and I was transferred to Far Eastern Air Force headquarters. Had a good job. I was a colonel's driver.
Mm-hmm.
Used to have to go pick him up at his billet and take him to work, and then I had the rest of the forenoon off, and I could take the car any place I wanted to go if he didn't want it. Had a brand new Plymouth.
Mm-hmm. Well, what kind of condition was Manila in at that point?
It was a bombed out area.
Mm-hmm.
Rizal Stadium, you ever heard of that?
Mm-hmm.
I've been in Rizal Stadium, and it was, some of the bleachers were left yet, but there was some bomb holes in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was the capital of Manila. No,
Well, I think. Well.
Manila was the capital of Luzon.
Mhm. Yeah.
Anyway, some of the government buildings were there yet, and they
Mhm.
were bombed some. And there were some big churches that had been bombed out.
Mm-hmm.
The main thoroughfare, which would be, what was the name of that street? I didn't think I'd ever forget it. I've got a map of Manila around here someplace. Rizal, no, it wasn't Rizal Boulevard. It might have been. Rizal Stadium was on that street, so it could have been Rizal Boulevard. But anyway, it was bombed out, and you could tell it had been through a war.
Mm-hmm.
I went one day. I took a trip with a jeep, and I went to Clark Field,
Mm-hmm.
and which was quite a jaunt. You don't think Clark Field's at Manila,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a long ways from Manila, or Yeah, from Manila. Took us just about all day to get there and all day the rest of the day to get back.
Mm-hmm.
But talk about airplanes. Wow, was there a bunch of them there? They were turning them in and parking them there, and that's where they left them. There was hundreds of airplanes there.
Did you go up there just to go take a look
Yeah,
at
just
it?
take a look at it. Yeah. I flew a lot in the Philippines. I was on just about every one of the main islands. I was on Cebu
Mm-hmm.
and Samar and Leyte and
Go down to Mindanao in the south?
Mindanao and Mindoro
Mm-hmm.
and Luzon.
And why were you flying around?
Just go for rides.
Okay. Uh, what kind of planes were you flying on, or how did you pick up the ride? Okay.
DC-3s.
Mm-hmm.
Usually a DC-3 or a C-46.
And why were they going back and forth?
Oh, they were hauling supplies.
Mm-hmm.
We might have to help unload supplies, like that. Pick up people that were flying out or going home, and they'd fly up and pick them up. They had lots of airplanes.
Do you remember anything distinctive about particular places that you went, or things that happened on any of those trips?
No, the one trip we went to, I think it was Mindanao. We landed, taxied over to a taxi strip parking area, and the pilot turned around. The tail wheel of the plane was actually almost on the grass. It was off the tarmac, because it didn't have tarmac. It was landing gravel or strip or mat or what. And we got to ask him how long a strip he had to have to take that plane off. And he said, "You guys stay here, and we'll drain all the gasoline we get out of it, enough to get me in the air and back again.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll take off crossways of this parking area." I believe he could have done it because he was a good pilot. But let's see, what else was there? Always flying out of the main air base in Manila was MacDill.
Okay.
Yeah, MacDill Field. And when the wheel stopped turning on the side I was on, I could see something hanging out of that tire. And I thought, oh man, they're going to blow a tire when we land. That's the tread coming out of the tire, the cords, you know. So I went up to the cockpit and I told the pilot, I said, "I don't know how to tell you this or not," but he said, "What is it?" And I said, "Well, that gear on this side of the plane," I said, "it's got something on the tire, or the cords are coming out of the tire, like it's going to blow out." He said, "Okay, when we land, we'll take it easy." He did. He kept it off that wheel until he could just barely touch it down and ease it down. And it was a sticker from a new tire. But I saw it.
All right. Now, did you have pretty much the same group of guys with you all the way through?
Yeah.
Was there?
Yeah, I was right with the same outfit. In fact, there's pictures of them here.
Mm-hmm.
Thought I made a couple of them pictures.
Yep.
Yeah, this is the motor pool crew, and I'm in that crew. You picked me out. Sitting down in the front row.
Well, were you that tall?
there,
Yeah. How about that?
Yeah. Good choice.
Okay. Let's see now. What sort of character was this colonel you were driving around, or did you not?
He was a nice guy. He was very. In fact, he saved me from going to prison.
Okay, you gotta explain that one.
When I was on Leyte Island, our mail had backed up for our trip coming up from New Guinea,
Right.
and then through the invasion, all our mail was all backed up. So we had truckloads of mail.
Mm-hmm.
So I went down. I took a 6x6 and went down and got a truckload of mail and brought it back. And Collins, or not Collins, Young,
Mm-hmm.
he was he was a company mail clerk,
Mm-hmm.
and Lessig was a battalion mail clerk, and I was a battalion mail clerk. The three of us sorted all that mail. Well, that mail had set in water 4 feet deep. So those old mail bags, which they shipped overseas, but they shipped the worst ones. They didn't ship the best ones. They were just rotted right out. So you'd pick them up by the string and they'd just fall apart. Well, I didn't know you were supposed to return those things. I just throw them right in the fire and burn them up.
Mm-hmm.
And the postal inspector for Leyte Island found out about it. I don't know how he found out about it. And they called me in to find out if I destroyed government mail sacks. And I said, I didn't destroy anything. I just got rid of them. He said, what do you mean you got rid of them? I said, well, they were rotted right out. They weren't worth keeping. Why ship something back like that when you know, the next guy that saw it would throw it away too. So and this colonel, he sat right there and he said, you're all right. And then the other thing he saved me on was we had a guy in one of our companies. We had A, B, C, and D company. And I think he was in either C or D company, forged my name at the base post office to pick up a insured package. And then he opened the package and took the watch out of it and kept it himself. And the guy that the watch belonged to was in that outfit. He spotted the watch. So instead of him going to that guy and getting his watch back, he went to his commander, company commander, and that company commander came to our company commander. Well, by that time I had left the outfit and I was in Manila. And this postal inspector says, Duane, I want you to sign your name. Just start here and just write your name over and over again. Just set, no hurry, no, just write normal. And I wrote my name, I don't know, probably 25, 30 times. And he compared it with the signature he had on that insured package. He said, that's not your signature.
So the Army did something intelligent.
Yep, they sure did. I'd have wound up in Leavenworth, I guess, I don't know where. And they did, I guess they went and picked that guy up. He'd already got home, and they picked him up for stealing of the government property or government mail. But this old colonel that I was driving around, he said, you did all right, Duane, don't worry about it. He said, we got you covered.
Well, good.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay. Are there other things you remember about your service up there, or particular things that kind of stick in your head about the people or what you saw or what you did?
Well, this Army buddy of mine, this is kind of a funny thing. I'm a cribbage player. I love to play cribbage. So I was telling him about playing cribbage. He said, can you teach me to play cribbage? And I said, well, I can try. So I taught him how to play cribbage. So he always tells everybody that he introduces me to in Nebraska, that he and I won the war playing cribbage.
Okay. Now, at what point did they send you home?
You had to have 59 points. When you got 59 points, you were eligible for state shipped home. I was due out of the Philippines in December of 44.
5, maybe?
45.
Yeah, after the war, yeah.
Yeah, December 45. And the day I was supposed to get on the boat, I come down with malaria.
Oh.
Wound up in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
They kept me in the hospital for 2 weeks, so I got on the next boat going out. And that was the Sacagawea.
Okay.
Victory ship or Liberty ship.
Liberty ship, yeah, okay.
And halfway across the Pacific, well, more than that. We were about 1,200 miles from the Philippines, or from Hawaiian Islands. And the ship was just rolling like that, you know, just up over the ground swells, they call them. There was no breakers or anything like that, and there was no water flashing up over the deck. But you just roll up like that, then just wallow down and roll back the other way. We had a whole engineer battalion with us. They were all black guys, and they, of course, they did all the cooking, and which were good cooks. and there was 37 white guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I was one of the white guys. I was down on number 3 hatch showing a movie,
Mm-hmm.
and that ship wallowed up like that, and they were baking donuts. And the grease flopped over on the stove and set it on fire and set the ship on fire.
Wow.
Well, when I went down there, it was daylight when I went down to that hatch.
Mm-hmm.
You could look out over the horizon, you couldn't see a boat anyplace. When I come up out of there, after I'd run probably one movie,
Mm-hmm.
2 hours, 2 hours and a half, it was dark. You could look any place you wanted to see, there was a boat sitting,
Mm-hmm.
ready to pick us up, because we were going to have to abandon ship.
So you were just down there running the movie while all that was going on?
Yeah.
So did you know there was a fire on the ship at the time?
I knew there was a fire when all of a sudden the smoke started settling down
Oh.
where you couldn't see the screen anymore, you know. You had to get down and look under the smoke to see the screen.
But nobody bothered to
No,
get you
nobody
out?
bothered to come and tell us and told us to get most of the guys had left by then.
Mhm.
I don't know if they knew what was going on or what, but they just got up and left.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they were on board the ship, and that end of the ship, they knew how to get out of there. I didn't know how to get out of there. So I finally got through the movie, and I folded the projector up
Mm-hmm.
and put the film back in the canisters, folded the screen down, and one of the guys said to me, he said, "What are we going to do?" And I said, "The only thing to do is lay down on the hatch, so you're below the smoke." So that's what we did. We was all laying down. The smoke was probably that far from the hatch.
Mm-hmm.
And paint
Yeah.
smoke. Oh, was that rancid stuff. And there was a big black man stuck his head in the hatch door and said, "Is there anybody in here?"
Mm-hmm.
And we said yes. He said, "Do you want out?" And we said yes. And he said, "Follow me." So we all chained hands together, and
Mhm.
he took us up on the top deck, which was
Yeah.
2 or 3 flights up.
And was it filled with smoke on the way
All
up?
the way up. All the way up. I didn't think I'd ever breathe again.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it was terrible.
And then did you have to abandon the ship?
No.
Okay.
No, they got the fire out, and they radioed San Francisco, or radioed wherever we was. I think we were headed for Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
And they radioed Seattle and told them that we had a fire, and we got the fire out, but we couldn't feed anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, "Okay, go to Hawaii and give them hand sandwiches or whatever you can in order to get them to Hawaii." So we started for Hawaii, and those black guys went in there and cleaned that ship up, painted it, and I worked with a guy from Flint, and we rewired the controls to the back of the ship,
Mm-hmm.
because he was an electrician, and we worked with the ship's electrician,
Right.
and I was new electricity,
Mm-hmm.
and we got it so we could keep going. And they radioed Seattle again and said, "We got it so we can feed everybody," and they said, "Okay, take it to San Francisco." So that's where we went. That's how close I come to getting Hawaii.
Oh, well.
We knew if we got to Hawaii we'd be stuck,
Mhm.
because nobody was stopping there to pick any GIs up. They would go the long routes.
Mm-hmm. So once you got back to San Francisco, were you discharged at that point?
We were discharged. We unloaded off the Cape New or the Sacagawea onto the pier, walked across the pier, and got on board another ship,
Mm-hmm.
which was a what do they call them? Like a scenic boat.
Okay, so a cruise ship or a liner.
Cruise ship, yeah, a small cruise ship,
Mhm.
but it held a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And they took us up through the San Francisco Bay, up past Alcatraz,
Mm-hmm.
and took us to Angel Island.
Okay.
And we got in there, and we hadn't had anything to eat since breakfast. And they was only feeding us barely 2 meals a day because
Mhm.
on account of that fire. you
Right.
know. So we were all hungry. So they got us in a big auditorium. It was a beautiful building. And this major got up on the stage, and he said, "In case any of you guys are hungry," and it's a wonder they didn't stone him right off the stage. They said, we're starving, we're famished." He said, "Okay." He said, "I've got my cooks working. They're cooking you T-bone steaks." He said, "You can have 1 T-bone steak. If you feel like you can eat the second one, you can have the second one. If there's any pigs among you, you can have the third one." And all the fresh milk you could drink.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, that was something. So we were fed, and it must have been 10, 11 o'clock at night
Mm-hmm.
before we got out of there. And they took us to barracks, give us all nice clean white sheets, and
Mm-hmm.
bedded us down for the night and painted numbers on our hats, and we were discharged right out of there. Well, we were shipped out of there. I wasn't discharged. I was discharged at, what's the place at Chicago?
Fort Sheridan?
Yeah, Fort Sheridan.
Yeah.
That's where I was discharged.
And then what did you do from there? Did you go back to Michigan at that point?
Yep.
Okay.
Came back to Michigan. Took the interurban downtown to Union Station and got on board what train did I get on? Oh, I wound up in Duran. I must have went right through here.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't even know it. Yeah, 'cause my brother-in-law picked me up in Duran. We stopped at my cousin's house in Flint.
Mm-hmm.
Had a cup of coffee and a sandwich. And on up to Marion. That's where my folks lived then.
Mm-hmm. And then what did you do then, now that you're out of the military? What kind of work did you get
I
into?
applied for unemployment.
Mm-hmm.
Never drew a check. Never got one check. I went to work for Consumers Power Company 3 weeks later, and I worked for them for 40 years.
And what kind of work did you do for
I
them?
was a natural gas technician.
Mm-hmm.
Testing gas wells and oil wells all over the state.
All right. To look back on it now, how do you think your experience in the military affected you, either just as a person or how you see things or view the world?
Oh yeah, I think it gives you a good education on, what to look for and how to act and
Mm-hmm.
what to beware of, so to speak. I never had anybody try anything with me.
Mm-hmm.
Did after I got out of the service, after I got to work for Consumers.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I think it was a good education. I said I wouldn't particularly want to go back and go through it again, but I wouldn't want it. I'm glad I never missed it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad I was there. And if I ever went back again, I'd be a cook.
Why would you be a cook?
Because I like to cook.
Good enough reason in itself.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for talking to me today.
Well, you're welcome. I enjoyed it. I hope I did all right.
You did just fine.